There are some hallways that breathe with you, matching the rhythm of your footsteps. Then there are others that exhale without warning, like they are waiting to pull something from you. Ward C always breathed first, a shallow, rattling kind of inhale, like a body trying not to cry. You could feel it the moment you stepped past the reinforced door. A pressure, not heavy, just persistent, like air refusing to settle. The floors were dull green, the kind that never fully dried, even after mopping. The lights above were stained with age, but the emergency bulbs, those little red eyes spaced every few feet, never dimmed. Even when the rest of the wing went dark, those lights watched, and they never blinked. My name is Claire. I am 39 years old. I have been a psychiatric nurse for 12 years. I volunteered to oversee Ward C when it reopened, mostly because no one else wanted to. I was always told I had a steady presence, the kind that made patients feel grounded, but the truth is, I feel safest when I am surrounded by the unwell. Their chaos matches mine. The hospital praised me for my calm. What they did not know is that I never feel calmer than when I am in a place that mirrors my unrest. Ward C was perfect for that. Quiet, closed off, forgotten. The wing had been sealed for 5 years, following the suicide of a long-term patient, though no one mentioned his name in meetings. Officially, it was reopened to accommodate overflow. Unofficially, people still crossed themselves when they walked by its door. The locks had been updated, the furniture replaced, everything appeared new, but the air remained the same. Even the paint on the walls seemed to flake faster than it should, curling like old photographs. I took my rounds seriously. I did not believe in ghosts, not then. The first few nights were uneventful. I worked the overnight rotation alone. No patients had been assigned to the wing yet, but I was expected to log activity and confirm environmental safety. Routine checks, mostly. That was until the third night, when I began noticing the flicker. Every night at exactly 3:09 a.m., the corridor lights would blink, not all at once, just one at a time, like a slow wave. Then came the soft click. It sounded like a door latch, but it never repeated. I checked every room. Nothing was open, no motion alarms triggered, but always that click. By the 6th night, patients from the main ward began reporting things. One said she saw someone in the observation mirror of room 4, even though no one had been placed there. Another patient claimed she heard a woman crying from the vents. These were not unusual claims for psychiatric wards. Hallucinations were common, but the timing gnawed at me. The flicker, the click, always just past 3 a.m. Always the same. It was on the 10th night that I broke protocol. Room 4 had always made me uneasy. The observation glass had a faint smudge on the inside that no amount of cleaner removed. I stared at it often, wondering if it was inside the glass, like a flaw in the reflection itself. That night, when the lights flickered and the click echoed down the corridor, I walked straight to the door and unlocked it. I had no reason, no report, just a tightness in my chest that begged for air. The room was cold, not winter cold, wrong cold, like the kind of cold that comes from forgetting to feel something for too long. The overhead light buzzed faintly, but the red emergency glow was sharp. It poured across the floor and pulled beneath the bed. That was the first thing I noticed. The bed was too low. It was not the mattress, it was the shadows. They were pulled downward, as if the space beneath the bed stretched deeper than the floor. Aloud, I should have walked out, logged it as a wiring issue, but something kept me in place. I turned to the observation mirror. My reflection looked back, tired, stiff, but then I blinked, and it did not. I raised my hand, so did it, but I felt it, hesitation. It was not copying me, it was leading me. I stood frozen. The reflection raised its hand again, palm open, and pressed it against the glass. I did not move. It lowered its head, slowly, like someone mourning something long past. I whispered to it without meaning to, "Please stop." It tilted its head, and though the room was silent, I heard something deep in my chest. Not a sound, but a memory. My father, silent in his recliner. My mother, crying in the kitchen. Me, in my room, pretending not to hear. That silence, it returned in full. I backed away, never taking my eyes off the mirror. The reflection remained still. The red light seemed brighter now, sharp enough to hum. I closed the door and locked it. I walked the rest of the wing with my breath in pieces. I did not finish my rounds that night. I filed a vague maintenance request in the morning. Flickering lights, possible misaligned temperature controls. I left out everything else. No one followed up. I refused reassignment to Ward C, but I did not explain why. Since then, every night on my floor, at exactly 3:09 a.m., my hallway light outside, room 17 blinks once, just once. No one else notices. I never mention it. I simply pause, let it pass, and breathe. They say the hospital breathes through its people, that we carry what it cannot say. I believe that now. Some reflections do not show you who you are. They show you who stayed behind. There is a kind of silence in old radiation rooms that feels different from any other. It is not peace. It is not stillness. It is pressure. Like sound trying to break through, but something thick holds it back. The lead-lined apron closet was never supposed to echo, yet I always felt that something waited inside. Maybe it was the weight of the aprons. Maybe it was the stories sealed into the metal threads, but it never felt empty, never truly still. My name is Tanya. I am 42 years old. I have worked as a psychiatric radiology nurse for almost 11 years. I am steady, practical. I am the one they call when a patient panics inside the MRI tube or starts screaming during contrast. I do not rattle easily. That is what I told myself before the voice started calling my name. The closet was small, only 8 feet across, lined with heavy gray vests, meant to shield bodies from stray beams. Most techs found it claustrophobic, but I liked the stillness. It was a place where nothing moved. You could be alone there and let your pulse return to normal. You could pretend the hospital did not hum behind the walls. 2 months ago, a man named Thomas R. came in for a routine scan. He had been complaining about headaches and visual distortions, flashing lights, faint voices, sensations of movement when still. Psych eval cleared him. We prepped him for a cranial MRI. I remember his grip when I placed the lead apron over his legs. It was too tight, he said. Please do not start the scan yet. I asked why. He said, it sees me clearer than I see myself. We laughed about it afterward. The scan showed nothing conclusive. He was scheduled for follow-up in 3 weeks, but he never made it. He died by suicide 3 days later, jumped from the roof of the West Building. No note, just his hospital gown folded neatly at the edge. I did not connect the dots at first, but then the closet door began clicking open by itself during late shifts. I would close it, double-check the latch, and still, half an hour later, it would sit slightly ajar. That was when I first heard my name. It was quiet, firm, like someone standing too close behind me, speaking directly into my shoulder. Tanya. I turned. Nothing. I opened the closet, just aprons, still on their hooks, swaying faintly as if brushed by wind that did not exist. The first few times, I blamed fatigue, stress, maybe audio bleed from a nearby intercom, but the voice grew clearer, not louder, just more real, not like a thought or a hallucination. Like breath, it always happened in the same spot, 2 steps inside the apron closet, right near the second hook on the left. The lights overhead would dim slightly. When I stepped in, that part bothered me more than the voice. It meant something was drawing power, something that should not have been there. I started logging the incidents, quietly. No reports, just notes in a personal journal I kept in my locker. I stopped sharing my schedule. I took fewer breaks near the imaging wing. Still, the voice found me. Sometimes it would whisper just my name. Other times it would say, "Not yet," or "Wait for it." Always the same tone, calm, clear, too clear. One night, after everyone had left, I decided to confront it. I brought a flashlight, a recorder, and locked myself inside the closet. I stood still, surrounded by layers of lead and silence. The walls seemed to absorb sound. Even my own breathing felt muffled. I closed my eyes. My heart kicked once. The voice came from in front of me, though nothing stood there. "Do not let it scan again." I opened my eyes. The recorder in my pocket was flashing red. I had not hit record. The voice spoke again, slower this time. It sees through the skin. It learns the shape of fear. My throat went dry. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" Silence. "Then tell them, before it chooses another." I do not know how long I stood there. The flashlight flickered once. A low vibration filled the air, like distant machinery warming up, but all machines had been shut down. I left the closet shaking. For the first time in my career, I called out sick the next day. I stayed home, sat in the bathtub, and replayed his scan in my mind. I remembered something, a small shape in the upper right corner of the image. At the time, the technician said it was likely an artifact, dust on the lens or a reflection in the imaging field, but it had a symmetry to it, like a crouched figure, with its arms wrapped around its knees, looking inward. That same week, a new patient was scheduled. Female, early 20s, non-verbal episodes, tremors, suspected schizophrenia. Her name was Carla. As we prepared her for the scan, she looked up at me with wide tearless eyes and whispered, "Please do not let it see me." I froze. I told the team the machine needed maintenance. I cancelled the scan, sent her to neuro for alternative imaging. I did not explain why. They did not ask. Later that night, I returned to the apron closet one last time. I brought an envelope containing my notes, a printed copy of Thomas's scan, and a letter addressed to the ethics committee. I left it on the floor beneath the second hook. The next morning, it was gone. No one claimed to have seen it. I never asked again. I work in admin now, outpatient scheduling. I do not go near the radiology wing, but once a week, I receive a page from Imaging Room 2, always the same timestamp, 11:41 p.m. No one is logged into the system. The scan folder is empty, yet the alert shows successful upload. I stopped checking after the third one. Now, when I close my eyes, I see light passing through bone, not just flesh, but memory. I see outlines of things that do not belong in the body, clinging to the spine, curled inside the rib cage, and I hear his voice, always the same. "Do not look too closely. Some things stare back." They always said she was radiant, but it was not the glow of recovery. It was not strength. The light around her felt misplaced, as if the bulbs themselves bent away from her skin, unsure whether to illuminate or retreat. Even in a room without windows, her silhouette shimmered faintly, like someone lit a match just beneath her skin. Most people ignored it. I could not. I am Nadine. I am 31. I work as a trauma nurse in the recovery unit, where the air always smells of antiseptic and warmed plastic tubing. I specialize in patients labeled non-responsive but stabilizing. That is the phrase doctors use when someone is too alive to mourn, but too still to speak. The in-between. I used to believe that was where hope lived. Now I know it is where something else waits. She came in, after the fire, age 15, no name at first, just a smudged intake form, half of it blacked out from soot damage. The note said her family was found inside the house, unrecognizable. She was outside, unburned, unconscious. Someone called it a miracle. I did not. Miracles do not blink when no one is watching. She was placed in room 9B. A holding space, really. No windows, one fluorescent panel, a monitor that hummed louder than the ventilator. I checked her vitals every 4 hours. Normal, always normal. Her skin was pale but untouched, her hair long and unburned, her fingers curled as though still holding something. She never moved, not even in sleep. But every morning, I found something changed. Tabak rotated slightly, the blanket pulled tighter around her ankles, the chair facing the corner instead of the bed. At first I assumed night staff were careless. Then I started leaving subtle markers, a hairpin under the sheet, a cotton ball beside the monitor. Each time, they were gone by morning. No staff reports, no security triggers, just absence. The doctors ran tests, scans, blood work, all clear. Catatonic response to trauma, they said. Let her rest. But rest is not supposed to flicker, not like this. One night while checking her IV line, I noticed something strange. Her veins glowed faintly beneath her skin, not blue, white, like threads of light buried under tissue. I dimmed the overhead to be sure. The glow remained, like the afterburn of a camera flash. I leaned closer. Her eyes opened. I froze. She did not look at me, just past me. Her mouth moved. No sound, only the faint shape of the words, "Let me go back." Her eyes closed again. The monitor stayed steady. Her pulse never changed. I called for assistance. By the time the team arrived, she was still, silent, asleep again. They told me it was stress, that I must have misread her expression. They checked the machines, all functioning. No record of conscious activity, but from that moment on, I felt it, the space around her, tight with something unspoken. Not grief, not fear, something else, like she was on a rope being pulled between two places, and the rope was fraying. I started sitting with her longer. I brought a small music player, and left it playing old lullabies at night, the kind my mother used to hum when I was too sick to sleep. The lights dimmed every time the music played. No one believed me, so I filmed it once. On playback, the dimming was gone. One morning, I noticed a smell, not foul, not medical, like wood smoke and dried earth. It clung to her pillow, to the collar of her gown. I checked the air vents. Clean. I asked staff. No incidents. It returned every day. Strongest at dawn. On my last night with her, I felt something change. I do not know how to explain it, except that the silence in the room had a shape, a density. The lights buzzed higher than usual. The monitor's hum deepened. I stood by her side watching the soft rise and fall of her chest. Then the bones in her arms began to glow. It was faint at first, a pearlescent shimmer beneath her skin, her clavicle, her ribs, even the outline of her spine beneath the sheet. All of it illuminated like an X-ray lit from within. The light pulsed. Once, twice, faster. Her eyes opened again. "Let me go back," she whispered. Her voice was thin, airy, like it came from behind her own face. I reached for the monitor. I do not know why. To stop it, to help her. I began disconnecting the leads. The screen should have flatlined. It did not. Instead, it began displaying strange symbols, shapes like fractured letters. I pressed the power button. Nothing. The machine kept humming, louder now, like a generator warming up. The lights overhead flashed once, and then everything went still. She closed her eyes. The glow faded. The machine fell silent. I sat there for what felt like an hour, holding her hand, listening for something, anything. In the morning, She was gone. No discharge papers, no records. Room 9B was scrubbed clean. A different patient was placed there the next day. I asked my supervisor what happened. She looked confused, said there had been no teenage girl in that room for weeks. I checked the system. No digital records, no logs. Her name never returned, just a blank space on the schedule where her ID should have been. The room was repainted a month later, brighter colors, new flooring. But every so often I walk past it and glance inside, and I swear when the light catches the far wall, I can still see the faint shape of a rib cage outlined in flicker. I do not work with non-responsive patients anymore. I asked to be reassigned. Pediatrics now. Children still believe in things they cannot name. Sometimes I do too. When I close my eyes, I see her there, standing just outside the edge of this world. Not lost, not trapped, just not ready. Some people do not survive, they return, and sometimes they are not alone. Time does not move in waiting rooms. It collects bills. It gathers like dust in forgotten corners, like the yellowing of paper, like silence, learning how to hum. The ground floor waiting room in our psychiatric facility had been officially closed for years. Old concerns, they said, bad wiring, an outdated HVAC system. But even after they locked the main entrance, the lights never went out. The coffee machine near the wall still purred, as though expecting someone, and no matter how long it sat unused, Chair 7 never gathered dust. My name is Ezra. I am 55, PAD. I have worked as a night janitor here since I was 24. 3 decades. My shift starts when the day staff vanish, and the building exhales. The halls grow quiet, but they do not sleep. They murmur, not voices exactly, but echoes of what came before. A cabinet settling too softly to stretch a wheel, creaking on its own. These things used to scare me. Now they are just part of the job. I was told never to enter that waiting room, not because it was dangerous, but because it was forgotten. Staff joked it was a dead end. Patients did not go there. The visitors no longer passed through, but I had a key, and I liked the solitude. There was something peaceful about the old leather chairs, the chipped table in the center, the faint flicker of a ceiling light that buzzed only when no one spoke. It reminded me of the old hospital, the one before the wings expanded and the funding shrank. 2 months ago, I found something strange. A coffee cup, freshly brewed, piping hot, sitting on the side table, next to Chair 7. No spills, no lipstick, no sugar packets, just black coffee. I had cleaned that room the night before. I knew it had been empty, and no one was supposed to have access. I asked security. They checked the logs. No movement, no key cards. I assumed someone was playing a joke, but then it happened again. The next night, same time, 2:14 a.m., same chair, same perfect cup. No signs of entry. I started watching more closely. I adjusted the chair before I left, made sure it lined up evenly, but every time I returned, Chair 7 was pulled slightly back, angled toward the corner of the room, like someone had sat down quietly and never moved again. I began to notice the temperature near the chair was different, a degree or two warmer, always faint but consistent. The vinyl on the armrest felt worn in a way, the others did not. The carpet beneath sagged slightly, as though something heavy had been pressing into it for years. Still, I said nothing. I am not the type to raise alarms. I clean, I sweep, I observe. On the 4th night, I checked the footage myself. It was grainy, hazier than it should have been, but I saw it. A figure seated in Chair 7, blurred, faint, but unmistakable. The man never entered the room. He never left. He just appeared in the chair, hands folded in his lap, face tilted slightly toward the door, waiting. I reported it once, got laughed at. "You sure it's not your reflection?" they said. "You've been working too many nights." So I stopped talking, but I kept cleaning, and the pattern continued. The coffee cup always appeared. The chair always moved. Some nights I heard faint creaking, like leather shifting beneath a shifting weight. Once I smelled aftershave, old-fashioned, the kind my grandfather used to wear. It lingered for hours and vanished just before dawn. Then one night, I decided to speak. The rain was heavy outside, hitting the windows like soft gravel. I had just mopped the hallway and stepped inside the room, and there he was, clearer than ever. Mid-60s, maybe older, wore a brown coat, buttoned tight. His face was downcast, unreadable. I stood there in the doorway, the mop still in my hand, and said quietly, "You waiting for someone?" He did not look at me, but I felt the answer, not in my ears, in my chest, like a breath that never belonged to me. Yes, the word echoed inside my ribs. "Who?" I asked. Still, no sound from him. But again, the answer came, calm and deliberate. "My daughter." Something tightened in my throat. She was never admitted. She was only supposed to be evaluated. I waited for them to call. They never did. I stood frozen, unsure if I was dreaming or slipping. But the words rang true, too true. And then I remembered. It was during my second year. A fire drill gone wrong. Alarms rang. Patients were rushed out. We were one short during the head count, but the numbers were corrected. I never thought about it again. They told us a parent had taken their child during the chaos, but there were whispers later that she had wandered into an empty corridor, that the vents had never been checked. I had been assigned to that floor. I was told to sweep the vents. I never did. I was tired, overworked. I assumed someone else would handle it. No one followed up. It was buried, and now Chair 7 would not let me forget. The man looked up. His eyes were dark, glassy, like old photographs faded in the sun. He did not accuse me. He did not cry. He only looked, as though I were the hallway, and he was waiting for her to walk through me. I could not speak. I turned away and left the room. The next night, the cup was still there. So was the chair, slightly pulled back, angled the same way. I did not move it. I dusted around it, mopped the edges. Then I left. I do not clean that chair anymore. Now every night at 2:13 a.m., I walk into that room and place a fresh cup of coffee beside Chair 7. I do not speak. I do not look at him. But sometimes I sit across from him, just for a minute or two. So he is not alone. The new janitors think the room is weird. They complain about the flickering light, about how the door sometimes shuts itself. I tell them it is just a glitch, nothing to worry about. I do not explain. The cameras no longer show anything, not even the chair, just static in that corner. It says the feed is corrupted. I do not push, but I know he is still there, waiting, because some calls never come, and some fathers never leave. Contrast dye glows like truth inside the body. It lights up what should not be there. Masses, shadows, damage. I used to believe it was the most honest thing in medicine, a signal that something unseen had been found. But sometimes, what glows is not a tumor, not a bleed. It is something else, something that never belonged in the first place. I am Melinda. I am 47 years old and a senior MRI technician at the facility. I have been running scans for over 20 years, long enough to spot subtle curves in the spinal canal, long enough to read fear in the way someone grips the table before we slide them into the bore. I used to believe in clean scans, clear, quiet images that sent people home with a sense of relief. I do not believe in those anymore, not since he came in. The patient's name was Brian. He had been with us on and off for a year, referred for chronic headaches, visual anomalies, and suspected seizures. Psychiatric consults marked him as stable but anxious. He spoke slowly, as if always measuring his words. What made him different was his calm, too calm, like he had stopped being afraid of the pain and started expecting something worse. We ran the first scan without contrast, no anomalies. He requested a repeat 2 weeks later, this time with dye. He insisted on it, said it made things clearer. Most patients hated contrast, the burn, the aftertaste, the flush in the chest, but he almost smiled as the drip began. He said, "Now it'll see me." The scan started, nothing unusual, but when the first image came through, I froze. Behind him, just over his left shoulder, was a shape. It was vague, humanoid, bent forward on one knee. No features, no thermal signature, just a form where there should have been none. I checked the machine, adjusted the slices, the shape remained. I called in tech support. They ran a calibration scan. No errors, no reflection issues, nothing in the bore. They blamed software lag, suggested I delete the images and run it again. I did. The second scan came through the next day. This time, the shape had moved. It was kneeling again, but closer. Its hand hovered just above Brian's shoulder, as if mid-motion. No one else saw it. They said it was a glitch, an artifact. I knew it was not. By the third scan, the figure's hand was resting on Brian's shoulder, and Brian smiled the entire time. I began to dread his appointments. I tried reassigning the case, but my supervisor insisted on consistency. "You know his calibration," they said. "He trusts you." I started sleeping in the break room, between shifts. My apartment felt watched. At night, the dreams came. A whirring noise, the slow mechanical slide of the scan table, a hum that never faded. I would wake up hearing the scanner, even though the machine was floors away. I could not stop thinking about the images. I printed one and locked it in the drawer under my station, labeled, "Do not open." It was a joke at first. Now it felt like a warning. Then Brian stopped showing up. No transfer, no discharge, no explanation. His file was closed, the contact numbers disconnected, no forwarding address. No one spoke of it again, like he had been a trial drug that expired. But the images remained in my mind. So I did what I promised myself I never would. I ran a test scan on myself. I told the intern it was for training. I set the timer, injected the dye, laid down, closed my eyes. The hum began. It felt longer than usual, like the table moved in inches, not smooth rolls. I kept my eyes shut. The machine beeped. I returned to the control room, pulled up the image, and there it was, the shape, only now, it was not kneeling. It stood, straight, facing the scanner. Facing me, its head tilted toward the bore, as if it had been waiting on the other side of the lens. Its arms hung at its sides, too long, its chest narrow, its outline sharper. I stared at the screen for too long. I forgot to breathe. I printed the image and slid it into the drawer. I locked it twice. Then I remembered something. Years ago, early in my career, I had flagged a scan during my night shift. It had a similar shape, faint, more abstract, like something trying to form but not yet solid. I showed it to my supervisor. He brushed it off, said it would terrify the patient, told me to delete it. He hesitated, but I did it. That patient died 2 days later. Seizure in his sleep. No known condition. We were told it was unrelated. I convinced myself of the same. Now I was not so sure. I tried to ignore it, go back to routine, but the machine changed. The scanner light would flicker before I arrived, like it was sensing me. The hum grew lower, almost vocal. The coils on the machine clicked, even when idle. I avoided the room, slept less, ate less. watched the hallway for shadows that never left footprints. Then came the worst part. A new patient, an elderly man with mild dementia, entered for a routine brain scan. As I prepped him, he looked directly at me and whispered, "Is it still behind you?" I dropped a clipboard. He blinked slowly. It follows those who try to erase it. That night, I went back to the control room, took the scan printouts, pulled the hard drive from the system, wrapped it in a towel, walked out the rear door, and buried it behind the building. No one noticed. No one asked. I requested leave the next morning. No one denied it. I do not run scans anymore. I work in scheduling. I see names, dates, faces on screens. That is enough. But some nights, I dream. I am back on the table, contrast running through my veins. The bore closing in, the machine humming louder, and something on the other side of the lens, finally standing still. I wake up with the click of the scanner, still ringing in my ears. And in the darkness of my bedroom, I swear I can feel something long and cold pressed gently against my shoulder. Some images were never meant to be revealed, and some truths never needed to be scanned.